Hello, this is Mrs. Spy, and this is me going over the rules for negative exponents. So there's two basic rules. X to the negative 1 is 1 over x, and x to the negative n is 1 over x to the n. And let's look at two more rules before we do some practice. Also useful to note these rules is if you had x over y raised to some power, that's x to the n over y to the n. For example, if you had 2 over 3 raised to the 4th power, that'd be 2 to the 4th over 3 to the 4th, or 16 over 81. And another important rule, you get x times y to the nth power, that's x to the n, y to the n. So if you had 3x to the 5th power, that's 3 to the 5th power times x to the 5th power, which is 243 x to the 5th. Okay, let's look at some negative exponents. So if I had x to the negative 5, I can also write that as 1 over x to the 5th. We call the negative power the power form, or the exponential form. We call this the simplified or rational form. Simplified or rational form. This is also called exponential. Okay, do another example. So if you had 3x to the negative 4, that would be 3 over x to the 4. 5 to the negative 2, that's 1 over 5 squared, or 1 over 25. Let's do some practice using the power rules. So if you had x to the negative 2, times x to the negative 5, you add the exponents, it's x to the negative 7, which is 1 over x to the 7. Same thing, if you had x to the 3rd over x to the negative 6, 3 minus negative 6 is x to the 9th. Because 3 take away negative 6 is 3 plus 6. Let's look at a power to a power. X to the negative 2 raised to the 4th power is x to the negative 8. It's 1 over x to the 8. And let's do an interesting example. Combining them, so we have x to the negative 5, y to the 3rd, over x to the 6th, y to the negative 3 squared. So you first subtract negative 5 minus 6 is x to the negative 11. 3 minus negative 3 is 6. Then you square that. X to the negative 22. Y to the 12th. And then don't forget, let's do one more step. x to the negative 22, y to the 12, that's in power form. If you want to write in rational simplified form, you move the negative exponent to denominator. One more thing before we go to the reason why. Something bizarre. Say we had x to the 5th over y to the negative 3 as your final answer. You take the negative and you bring it to the numerator. Same thing as if x was in the numerator. You bring this down to the denominator, and that's how it goes. So if the numerator is negative with the power, it goes out to the denominator. If in the weird case you have a negative exponent in the denominator, it moves to the numerator. Now, why does this happen? And then we'll wrap it up. So the reason it happens is all based on the rules of division. So if we mentioned yesterday, we get x to the 2nd over x to the 6th. So we have to subtract 2 minus 6. It's x to the negative 4. But why does that work? So if we wrote out the expansion, 2x's of the numerator, 4x's of the denominator, divide out the x's, 1 and 1, 1 and 1, left with 1 on top. And 4 x's in the denominator. So these two must be the same. And both the zero rule, like in the previous video, and the negative exponent rule both work. Coming up in the next few videos will be, what does an exponent mean when it's a fraction? So let's just review, do a review slide, and then we're done. So we have that x to the m, where it's negative, is 1 over x to the m. And when you're working with fractions, that exponent applies to everything. Hope that was helpful. This is my 5th video on exponents. More to come. This is Mr. Spy, signing off.